Hey pals, I'm here today to talk about the books I plan to read in the month of November. Now, my TBR is currently down to 30 books and I would like to get it down to 2. There's 2 books that for reasons I am okay with sort of saving until next year or just another time. So I would like to read around 14 books this month, so I've like halved it and then can read 14 in December. So I have quite a large TBR that are focusing on a couple of different readathons and then other things that I wanted to focus on, so I'm going to get started. The first couple are rereads because I reread The Paying Guest by Sarah Waters in September, absolutely adored it. It was a complete joy to revisit a favourite book, and I had a shitty reading month in October, which I'll talk about in a video in a few days' time. And so I decided to start November off strong with a reread of what I think is one of my favourite books of all time, and that is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. This book has actually been out for 20 years this year, and I think they just released a fancy special edition, which I need to get hold of. If you don't know, this is a novel set during the Victorian period. You follow a young girl called Sue Trinder, who is trained as a petty thief, and a con man says to her, "Will you come with me to this fancy house in the countryside and try and con this other young woman out of her inheritance?" And you sort of watch the story from there. It's absolutely fantastic. I am about 200 pages into it. I'm loving it. It's a delight. I'm reading it and listening on audio, and the audio book is phenomenal, so I'd highly recommend. And yeah, going to finish this in the next couple of days. And then I'm also planning on rereading The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So I read this book when I was 16 and I've never read it since. And so I'm now 32, so another 16 years has gone by, so I thought it'd be fun to sort of reread this half a lifetime on and see if I still love it as much as I did then. I mentioned this in my Patreon Discord, and a few other people had wanted to reread it or to read it for the first time, and so we have a channel in the Discord where we're going to chat about it, which I think is going to be really fun because there's a few people who've reread it a few times and we're all coming from really different places. So I hope I'll still really enjoy this because I've read her other 2 books since then and really enjoyed both. But obviously I'm a very different person to the person I was at 16, so we shall see. Then another book that is a buddy read, but sort of a bigger buddy read than the previous one, is Crow Lake by Mary Lawson, and that is my November book club pick for Patreon. I gave my patrons 2 family dramas to choose from, this being one of them and this one obviously one. This is a family drama set in northern Ontario. I think it's called The Badlands, and you're following 2 families whose stories sort of intertwine in quite tragic ways, and I think this is a retelling of a Greek tragedy, although I'm not sure which one. And this is Mary Lawson's debut novel. I think she has 5 or 6 books out, and I feel like she could be an author I really enjoy, so I've decided to go back to the start, and if I enjoy this one, then obviously continue with her books. This book sounds like a really good book to read in the colder months, so I'm really looking forward to it, and yeah, just hoping to have a really good chat with my Patreons. So there's that. And then the main reason I'm doing this video is to talk about the amazing Koden Readathon created by Kim over at the channel Native Lady Book Warrior. I'm going to link Kim's channel down below, as well as the announcement video for this readathon and also Kim's TBR video that she uploaded a couple of days ago. I absolutely love Kim's channel. She is probably the most joyous, happy, just smiley people I watch on YouTube. She has an infectious laugh and she does really detailed reviews, which I love. I love reviews that really dive into the story and everything the reviewer liked about the book or didn't like. She is an amazing voice for books by Indigenous authors, both fiction and non-fiction, and that is what this readathon is promoting. So obviously we should all be reading diversely throughout the year and reading from all different voices, because why would you not want to do that? But it is great, I always think, when there is a readathon that promotes those voices, because it means that there's one month in the year where you just get a real boost in such varied recommendations for those voices. And I always just love it. I love following the hashtag on Instagram. I love looking at everyone's TBRs, because rather than maybe just see the same few books spoken about, which are the most popular ones, you just hear about so many books. So definitely go and check out Kim's TBR. I think she's got 30 books on it, a mixture of books for Koden Readathon and non-fiction November. They all sound great. I can't wait to hear her review them. And also definitely go and check out the announcement video. There is a bingo card. I'll move so I can put it here, which is designed by Kim's daughter, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think my books that I have on my TBR are going to cover all the prompts except for middle grade or children's book, and also the bonus prompt of a graphic novel. And the reason I am not purchasing books to fulfill those prompts is because I'm trying to do this readathon with just books on my TBR or books available to me as an audiobook, because obviously I don't want to buy books and I'm trying to reduce my TBR. So yeah, I've just pulled books from my shelves and they just happen to tick all the other boxes for the prompts. So definitely go and watch Kim's video if you want to hear a more detailed explanation for some of these prompts and just all the other info. So the books. I have another reread, and that is of The Break by Koden Readathon. I've spoken about this a couple of times recently. I've spoken about it in various recommendation videos. It is an absolutely phenomenal book. I really love it. It's quite a brutal book. It's quite a difficult read. It opens with a woman witnessing another young woman outside her window being assaulted in the snow. When she calls the police, they're like, there's nobody out there, like, you must have just seen a bit of a fight, like, whatever. And then you go back in time a few days in the build up to that violent incident, and you're following a group of women who are related to one another, and then a couple of side characters like a police officer, and you build up to that violent event, and then you sort of watch the fallout from that. But this book, whilst devastating, is just a testament to the power of women's relationships and sort of dedication and love to one another. And I find her writing so beautiful yet so readable. I really love this book. I would love to see more people talk about it. And she this year has released a sort of companion novel called The Strangers. And so I wanted to reread this one before jumping into this one. You can read this one first. You won't like miss anything, but one of the primary characters in this book was a character in this book, and I think this is set a little bit sort of around the time of this one, both before and after, if that makes sense. So The Strangers, which is such a beautiful cover, follows a mother and her two daughters, and I think you get perspectives from each of the three of them. The two daughters have been taken into care and the mother's trying to get them back, and you're following each of their stories. Are in really different situations as they all sort of try and make their way back to one another. So can't wait to read this one. And Koden Readathon is a Métis writer from Treaty 1 territory, which is the heart of the Métis Nation, and these books take place in Winnipeg. At least this one did, and I think this one will in some parts be set in Winnipeg. So excited to read both those in the same month. And then this next book I've heard nothing but amazing things about. I feel like this could be a 5-star read. It won loads of prizes in Canada. It just sounds amazing. And that is 5 Little Indians by Michelle Good. In this book you follow 5 friends who were all raised in a residential school, and when they come of age they are released from the residential school with absolutely no financial support or aid and no real training or ability to look after themselves in the sort of outside world. And you follow the 5 of them throughout the subsequent years as they sort of, their paths cross and crisscross, and they all just try and make their way. And this is supposed to be a really, really powerful book about how these 5 individuals sort of try and move on from the trauma they experienced in the residential schools and their friendship with one another. And I've read a couple of non-fiction books that have sort of large sections on residential schools in Canada, and just absolute horror that they were. Just one of the worst things I've ever sort of learnt about. And if you don't know anything about them, you really should go and read about them, because it is just horrific. And the Canadian government really hasn't taken the responsibility to try and fix in any way the repercussions of people being sent to residential schools. And so yeah, I haven't read any fiction, I don't think, so I'm really looking forward to this. And the author is a writer of Cree ancestry and a member of the Red Pheasant Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. I hope I said that right. I think I did. So yeah, can't wait to read this one. I think it's going to be amazing. And then I have Buffalo is the New Buffalo. This is a short story collection by Chelsea Vowell. This has one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen. And this is a recent release. This came out a few months ago. This sounds absolutely fantastic. So it says, education is the new buffalo is a metaphor used among Indigenous peoples in Canada to signify the importance of education to their survival and our ability to support themselves, as once Plains Nation supported themselves as buffalo peoples. The premise is that many of the pre-contact ways of living are forever gone, so adaptation is necessary. But Chelsea Vowell asks, instead of accepting that the buffalo and our ancestral ways will never come back, what if we simply ensure that they do? Inspired by classic contemporary speculative fiction, Buffalo is the New Buffalo explores science fiction tropes through a Métis lens. And interestingly, this has a great introduction that sort of dives into the term education of the New Buffalo. And then after each short story, there is a short essay, which is like if you were in a class studying this short story. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm very intrigued to read this. I've never read a short story collection that does that before. And yeah, hoping to really enjoy it. And the last physical book I have is a non-fiction book. So this will also work for Non-Fiction November, which I'm taking part in, although it's just sort of reading whatever I want to read and not trying to fit them to the 4 word prompts that Olive has created. So I'm actually partway through this book, and that is An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz. This is from a collection from Beacon Press where they do, for example, an African-American women's history of the United States, a Latinx history of the United States, and this is obviously an Indigenous people's history. They're always supposed to be quite short, so this is around 250 pages, and I'm about a third of the way through it. And I will say it's cramming a lot of history of a very large landmass into quite a short book. So if you want sort of an introduction, this is maybe a good place to go because it sort of condenses the information, but also because it's so condensed, maybe not a good introduction because I feel like it's lacking some context that I have from other books I've previously read. So I'm definitely enjoying it. More than anything, it's inspiring me to look in the bibliography and like anything that I'm like, God, I would really like to know more about that region in particular or that part of history. I'm looking at the bibliography and the books that she cited and, you know, going to give those ones a go. So would definitely recommend this book so far. But like I said, to have a little bit more of it to read. And then I have a few audiobooks lined up. The first one being Murder on the Red River by Marcy R. Rendon. I hadn't heard of this series, but it sounds really good. I heard Kim talk about it. I think there's 3 books out now. These are called the Cash Black Bear Mysteries. And this one says there's a murdered man found in a field. The sheriff needs Cash, a 20-something smart Indian woman with special seeing powers. Cash and the sheriff make for an odd partnership and they sort of try and investigate this together. I think her books have a focus on missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is like, again, such an important topic that not enough people know about or the government aren't doing enough about. Like, it's absolutely horrific. Definitely go and look into the sheer amount of missing and murdered Indigenous women is insane, and the fact that just barely anything is being done about it is disgusting. And this novel focuses on a couple of cases in particular and follows this female Indigenous woman as she tries to help investigate. So I'm hoping to really enjoy this one and then carry on reading the series. And then 2 books that I've meant to read for a couple of years now, so I'm just sort of fed up with hearing myself talk about them. I have got them downloaded as like my next lined up audiobooks before I heard about this readathons, but this has given me like the boost to read them. The first one is a novella called Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wab Gashika Rice. This, like I said, is a novella and it is a post-apocalyptic look at a reserve during this apocalypse. This Anishinaabe community are living there and sort of surviving quite well. And then I think some white people like rock up and say, oh, like, can you help look after us? We're like really struggling, and it's about the decision the community leaders have to make about whether to remain insular and sort of protect their own people or whether to welcome these newcomers. And then I think like some horrible stuff goes down. So I've heard really good things about it. I've managed to not be spoiled, but I would really like to get to it this month. And the next one I have is by an Aboriginal Australian author, Melissa Lukashenko. All of her books sound amazing, but I've wanted to read this one for a while, and that is Too Much Lip. This is a gritty and darkly hilarious novel, which I really like the sound of. We follow this queer First Nations Australian woman as she returns home to face her family and protect the land of her ancestors. It says that she plans to only spend 24 hours like over the border with her family, but things don't go to plan. Again, I've heard really good things about this author's writing, and I have wanted to read this book for too long. And then I have another stack of books specifically for Non-Fiction November. These are all books off my shelves. I still have a few other non-fiction books I'd like to get to, but I am prioritising these ones for the month of November. The first one being Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice by Leah Lakshmi Pepsner Sharamashina. I've heard amazing things about this. Again, this is available on audio, so I may listen to this as I read. This is an essay collection. It says the author explores the politics and realities of disability justice, a movement that centres the lives and leaderships of sick and disabled queer, trans, Black and brown people with knowledge and gifts for all. Care Work is a mapping of access as radical love, a celebration of the work that sick and disabled queer people of colour are doing to find each other and to build power and community, and a toolkit for everyone who wants to build radically resilient, sustainable communities of liberation where no one is left behind. This has amazing reviews. I've had nothing but good things about it. I've read the introduction. She has a really warm voice, so I'm hoping to really enjoy this one. And then I thought it'd be really interesting to read this next book alongside it, and that is Crippled, Austerity and the Demonisation of Disabled People by Frances Ryan. I think this book has a focus on Britain. It says, in austerity Britain, disabled people have been recast as worthless scroungers. This is updated to include the coronavirus crisis, and it looks at like how awful things are getting in Britain in regards to disabled people. So hoping to get a lot out of this one and then maybe get some recommendations for other books to pick up. Then another essay collection that I picked up this year that I've heard really good things about is We Do This Till We Free Us, Abolitionist, Organising and Transforming Justice by Mariam Makabe. This is a collection of quite short essays actually. A lot of these essays are like 5 pages. Some of them are like written down. What do you call this? Like when somebody gave a talk, there is a word, you know what I mean? When like you write the talk down and you can then, there's a word, don't know what that word is. Heard really good things about this. I read a couple of other books that focused on a similar topic but were a little bit older, and so I thought it'd be interesting to pick up a really recent book that would, you know, talk to our current situation in regards to this subject matter. So yeah, looking forward to this one. And then I have a memoir and essays. I haven't really got enough memoirs on this list, so maybe I will pick up a couple more on audio. But the one I have physically is I'm Telling the Truth But I'm Lying by Bassie Ikpi. I actually read a third of this when I got it a few years ago and really enjoyed it, and then just got distracted with other books or like life stuff, I think. So I'm going to go back to the start and start rereading that first section. It says, in this remarkable memoir and essays, Bassie Ikpi explores her life as a Nigerian-American immigrant, a black woman, a slam poet, a mother, a daughter, and an artist, through the lens of her mental health and diagnoses of bipolar 2 and anxiety. And from what I remember, the writing style was really beautiful, so I'm looking forward to revisiting this one and actually finishing it. And then I have 2 books, one fiction and one non-fiction, that were on my 5-star predictions earlier in the year. And they are the last 2 that I haven't read, and I would like to, of course, wrap that up by the end of the year. The first one is This is Vegan Propaganda and Other Lies the Meat Industry Tells You by Ed Winters. I don't really think I need to tell you what this book is about. Ed has a YouTube channel called Earthling Ed. He's the reason I went vegan quite a few years ago now, and I've been following him ever since. Super happy at how his like activist career is going. He's making such a big difference, and really happy to see that he managed to publish a book earlier this year that I still haven't read. It's a hard one because I obviously know like this subject matter, hence why I'm vegan. I think if you know this subject matter in the detail that you need to, it's pretty hard to like not want to go vegan. But when you know it, it's sometimes quite hard to like want to hear more about it because it's so horrible. So yeah, I've sort of been putting this off, but definitely want to get to it this month. I think I will really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. And then the novel I have as a 5-star prediction is Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Equiassi. This is a family drama that focuses on, I think, 2 sisters and their mother. It's supposed to be really beautiful and lyrically written. This is another one I might listen to on audio whilst I read because it is available on Scribd. It says this sweeping debut novel tells the interwoven stories of 3 Nigerian women, and I think this is set across Canada and Nigeria. Intergenerational tale of choices and the consequences of motherhood, of the malleable line between the spirit and the mind, of finding new homes and mending old ones, of voracious appetites of queer love, of friendship, faith, and above all, family. And if that isn't one of the most beautiful covers of all time, I don't know what is. I'm on to the last 3, we're nearly there. The next book has a very similar colour palette to the previous book, and it is also beautiful. And that is Small Game Hunting at the Local Coward Gun Club by Megan Gale Coles. I would like to read this book because this is actually set in February, and it's supposed to be set on Valentine's Day, and it opens during a blizzard. But I would like to read this now because I'm hoping to do a like winter reader recommendations video, and I feel like this book could be a good one to feature if I enjoy it, so I'm going to give it a go. So you're following a restaurant And it says, a fierce blizzard is threatening to tear a strip off the city, while inside the Hazel restaurant, a storm system of sex, betrayal, addiction and hurt is breaking overhead. And you follow the group of people inside the restaurant and also a homeless lady sitting outside the restaurant during the blizzard. It says, through rolling blackouts, we glimpse the truth behind the shroud of scathing lies and unrelenting abuse and discover the resilience proves most enduring in the dead of this winter's tale. So I think this is going to be quite a dark read, but I've heard people say it's really interesting and quite unique in its telling, so I am very much intrigued by this one. And then I've really been enjoying reading fantasy recently, and I have quite a few fantasy books on my shelves I would like to read by the end of the year. These are the two I definitely want to read. I don't know if this is 14 books actually, but if I need to read more, will reach for more fantasy, but these are the two I will 100% be reading. The first one being Bonds of Vengeance, there is my bookmark, which is book 3 in the Wind of the Foreland series by David B. Coe. This is a sort of epic political fantasy series I've been really enjoying, and definitely want to read this book as soon as possible because the politics is pretty complicated and there is a ton of characters. I read the last book a couple of months ago and don't want to leave too big a gap between reading them, and I'm just really enjoying these and I get through them quite quickly when I do pick them up. And then from the third book in a series to the first book in a series, I have The Dark Mirror by Juliet Marillier. This is book 1 in the Brede Chronicles. I've read quite a lot of her series. I think I've read most of her newer series and I'm now moving back in time to her older series. This is, I think, her only series that is set in what we now know as Scotland, but at the time this is set was not Scotland. Yeah, all the others I've read have been inspired by Ireland, I think. So yeah, this is interesting to follow like a different story. And I think Brede is an actual person. So this is sort of like a retelling. We follow this initially young boy who grows up to be a young man throughout the trilogy. And he is being raised by a druid, I think. And he sort of knows he's being raised for greatness and there's a lot expected of him. He's being trained in various crafts and knowledge. And when he's quite young, a baby girl is deposited on the doorstep of the home that he lives in, and everyone else wants to sort of send her off to be cared for, and he demands that they keep her, and you sort of follow the story from there. My understanding is that each novel follows a different character, so you sort of get like a different perspective on the story of Brede, and I find Juliet Marillier's novels really cosy. I had such bad luck with her most recent trilogy. I think it was just a complete failure, and so I'm hoping if I go back to her older books, they will be great again. So yeah, hoping to at least read the first one in the trilogy. I have all 3, so I really love it and I have time in November. I will move on to the next one. So those are all of the books I'm going to try and read in November, like I said, for various readathons. I would love to know if you're taking part in Koden Readathon or Non-Fiction November. I'd love to know what your TBRs are, if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them, or if you have any books on this list that you think I should prioritise, because I'm hoping to read them all because I am really into reading at the moment and spending most of my spare time when I'm not working reading, which I'm really enjoying and hasn't been the case all this year. So I'm hoping I can manage it, but in case I can't, let me know which ones you think should be priority. I am focusing on the books for Koden Readathon as the main priority, but yeah, do feel free to let me know your thoughts as well. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.